In this clip, we're going to talk about how to set up basic materials for our assets. So let's go ahead and go to our meshes folder, and let's bring in barrel_LP. Left click and drag that into the scene. And what we want to do is begin setting up the material. Now with this particular asset, the material was exported out from 3ds Max. To find the material that is being used, let's expand Barrel LP and then select the actual mesh objects in this group. Select Barrel Metal Low, and you'll see that there is a material applied to it. In this case, the material is called No Name, and that's because with this particular asset, the name was never changed from 3ds Max. So what we want to do is we want to find this material in our materials folder. Double click on the materials folder and you'll find the material called No Name. In this case, you can see that the material comes in as a standard shader. In Unity, by default, any materials that are imported as the standard shader. Now the standard shader is a physically based rendering material. What this means is that the material generates the look of itself through physical means and algorithms. So to break this down, every object has color, and that color in its purest form is called albedo. And what that means is that the color has no lighting information. So if you think of a cue ball from a billiard set, a cue ball is white. Now it does have other properties on it other than just being white. It is shiny, so it has a high smooth value. It is not metallic, so it has no metallic value. And it might have some chips and scratches on it. And so we could add a normal map value to that to represent that high resolution data. Now physically based rendering or physically based shading is a method of texturing, and it allows you to create a consistent look across all of your materials. In our mind, we can think of an object either being metallic or not metallic. So the metallic value would either be 0 or 1. Now we can look at certain objects like skin itself. The smoothness value of skin could be around 0.1 or maybe even lower. The skin itself absorbs more light than it bounces. So the higher a smoothness value, the more light it bounces. The lower it is, the more it absorbs and scatters. So without getting too far into physically based shading, let's go ahead and talk about how to create this material. Now, if you want to learn more about physically based shading and creation of materials in general, I would suggest looking at the Unity Materials Fundamentals course by Chris Pello. So let's go ahead and set up the material for this barrel. So we have the No Name material selected. Let's go ahead and rename this to Barrel. Now if we hit enter, you're going to notice that we get an error saying, wait a minute, there is a barrel already in this particular folder. This was created from before. What I would like to do is simply delete it and hit delete. And then let's go to the No Name, and I'm going to rename it. Now let's go to the albedo, which is going to be where our color texture is applied. If we hit the selection icon, we go to our select texture dialog, and here we have barrel_LP albedo. Select that, and then let's move to the metallic. Now this particular object has metallic and non-metallic, or also known as dielectric materials on it. So in this case, we'll click metallic and choose the metallic map. Looking at this map, you'll notice that it has two values, black or white, meaning it's either metallic or it's not in certain areas. In the black areas, this is where the wood is located, and it's telling us that there is no metallic value here. To understand this texturing method, black gives us a value of 0, whereas white gives us a value of 1. In these white areas, we're saying that the object is metal in these areas. Now these areas are depicted through the UV map of the 3D model. And the UVs were created in the 3D package, and then the object itself was textured in Substance Painter. Let's go ahead and apply the metallic map. And looking at this, you'll see that it's very shiny and looks metallic on the metal bands. But the wood itself does not appear so. Now what we would want to do is go ahead and apply our normal map. The normal map is going to give us faked high-resolution data. And what that means is it's not changing anything about the mesh. It's not changing any of the polygon counts or anything. It's just going to apply a bump or normal map to fake that high-resolution data. So to see this in action, let's simply click on Normal Map and go to Barrel LP underscore default normal. Double-click on that, and you'll see now that it appears that we have some detail. So you'll see things like the scratches on it. Let's select the object and hit F, and you can orbit around the object, and you can see the normal map data. So now that we have that applied to our barrel, we've created a very simple material. Now, depending on your needs for your game, your materials can get much more complicated than this. For instance, you may have a material that is needed for a tattered flag. Instead of using the standard shader, you may have to use the standard shader with a different rendering mode. Or perhaps you have a fire that doesn't need to be lit. You might use a different shader like unlit. Or perhaps you might even use the particles shader to create the material that is necessary for particles. So there are lots of different shader types that we can use, and they all have their different uses. Now we're not going to go into each one of those because it's just not within the scope of this course. But like I said, you can take a look at the Unity Materials Fundamentals course and learn all about shaders and textures. So now that we've talked about how to create a material, let's talk about how to work with components.